Right, welcome back to part 3. Now here we go with what could be a long one. We're going to start programming now. And one thing that struck me as I was waiting for this to process is that you might not know how to get these models to appear. You just the size of the little size slider here inside of your project assets is how you do that. This error as well is because I forgot one very important thing. The wheels that we have, all 4 wheel meshes, they can't have colliders. So if we click on this front left and you just remove this collider component completely, so that's really important because the wheel collider is the collider. You don't want to have anything else messing up with it. So for all 4 wheels, what you need to do is just make sure that you have click on the little cog and remove component for each of the 4 wheels. So this is the mesh of the wheels. So the top level wheel collider is the thing that does all the work. So it might actually behave a little nicer now when it hits the ground. So if you hit play, you'll see that it kind of like sits and bounces, and the wheels won't move, and they won't for a while. But we're gonna just go with that. So the top level game object with the rigid body on is the one we want to add a script to. So we're going to organize my project just a little bit. So inside of assets, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it scripts, and then inside of that I'm going to create a new C# script, and I'm going to call it something spectacular like car. Coding conventions, capital C for the class name, and we are going to keep this as simple as we can. So it'll inherit from monobehavior and it'll do nothing fancy. Right, so thinking about this, we should probably, as we're thinking, you should write a summary. So the summary is just 3 forward slashes in Visual Studio. It gives you a little bit where you can summarize what you're going to do. So I'm just going to write this as a simple car script to accelerate and steer. So I can add to that as I go. So first up, the main things that we need to get is the wheels. So we need public wheel colliders. We need 4 of them, and I'm going to try and keep the same naming conventions that I had inside of Unity. So it was wheel front left, wheel front right. So front left, front right, back left, back right. So so if I say front left, and then we'll just copy this line, Control C, Control V, and we'll say front right, and then we want this one to be back left, and we want this one to be back right. So they are kind of named the same, so that's easier to find. What we're going to basically do is we're just going to add the easiest way to do this, and I do this all the time when I'm programming, not so much in tutorials, but as I'm learning how to do stuff. So if we've got a particular component that we want to work with, you can click on the little book next to it. A window pops up, the internet pops up in your default browser, and you can read a little bit about it. You can see the properties, you can see some information about it, and I've switched to scripting as well, and you get to see all of the different things you can do. So I've done this a few times, so I know that motor torque is the one thing that we want. We've got a positive and negative depending on direction, so we want this motor torque, and we also want the steer amount, so the steer angle is here as well. So those 2 things, you click on them, you not always get great. It's a classic example of really poor documentation, but that you can see from some of them, not great, that it is possible to get some information from it. So we want to use those. Okay, so yeah, back to the script. We want to be able to get these public wheel colliders, and then we want to try and get some input. So do we need to do anything at the start? Yes, from experience, for one of the wheels, you need to do this thing. I'm just configure vehicle substeps. Now this is a weird thing where you've got a speed threshold, and if I'm just going to try and do this from memory. So if I say a speed of 3, and then it says the number of substeps below that speed, so we want a lot when you're below it, and then not so many when you're above it. So I'm going to do 10 and 5. Now this is one of those weird things that sort of cropped up inside of Unity, and I didn't really know when it happened, and then through digging and digging and digging, if your car just freaks out and spazzes out when it's on the ground, it's probably because it's not got enough substeps, and it's all a fine balance between the processor you have and the speed that the frames are going compared to the physics. So yeah, I found that this value kind of sometimes need to be tweaked, and weirdly enough it only needs to be done on one of the wheels and it works across the entire vehicle, which is also another weird thing. So yeah, we'll try and keep it as simple as possible. So I'm just going to create some input. So I'm going to say float x equals, I'm going to say input dot, and I'm going to use the get axis, and I'm going to use for the x I'm going to use horizontal. Now it's important that you spell that right, because it won't tell you otherwise. And I'm going to say float y equals, and we'll use input dot get axis again, and this time we'll use vertical, just check that I spell it right, and we're good. Now this is local variables right here, and I'm just going to use a little get input from axes. Okay, and then we're just going to go through each one of these and apply either steering or drive based on this input. What we might need to do is set some variables up. So if I make a float max steer, and we'll make that equal to 20, and we'll make these are both public. We'll make them public just now until we get them right, and then we can we'll make them private until we can get them about right, and then we'll make them public, and then that way we won't be stuffing around too many times, because we've got the code open. We don't need other people to change it until we're kind of happy with it. So actually, coding conventions would suggest that both of those have to be a small m. So max torque, T-O-R-Q-U-E, and I'll make that equal to, I don't know, I'm just making that up, so 100. Maybe too much, maybe not. You can happily ignore these, by the way. They often create extra stuff for you that just is not required. You're better off just keeping it as simple as you can. So now that we have the input, we're just going to go through each of the wheels. Go through wheels and apply force and steering. So we may as well do them in order. So we'll do front left dot steer angle equals the y value times the maximum steer. So I'm assuming this will work. So I'll say front right dot steer angle equals the y value times the max steer again, and then for the back wheels we're going to say back left dot motor torque equals I've got those the wrong way around. So this is for steering it's the horizontal, and for the accelerating it's the up and down, so the y. So the motor torque is y times the max torque, and then back right dot motor torque equals y times, I would have found that out as soon as we played it. So this is making the update function pretty big. I could break these out into a couple of different functions, but for now I just want to get it up and running. So it's compiling now, and this time when we hit play, so now that it's compiled, when it hits the ground you should be able to hit forward and it should move. Oh no, you can't, because we haven't applied the script. That's a dumb thing. So the top level race car green that's where the script goes, and each of the wheel colliders need to go onto the correct place. So wheel front left goes onto front left, wheel front right goes onto front right, wheel back left goes onto back left, and wheel back right goes into back right. That way you have access to the wheel colliders as you play. So hit that, hit forward, and we've got some movement. So it's kind of going a bit slow, and it's a bit slippy as well. I think what we'll do though is we'll call that a win, and in the next video we'll get the wheels moving as the wheel colliders move, and then we'll tweak the physics and make sure that it's a nice fun control system.